We will give it about another minute and then we'll go ahead and get started here. Good to see everyone today. So the reason I am excited about today's call is because, a lot of people, it seems like no matter how much we talk about, I'm going to share them away, no matter how much we talk about, the process or what we do, it's really the number one question we get, right? Is like, when do we talk about this? How do we talk about this? How do we incorporate it in our business? And the market has changed, opportunities have changed. And so I think this is a good time for us to pick up on a bit of a refresher on what people should be doing and how they should be utilizing this really unique product that we all have, the superpower that we have in our day-to-day. So I'm going to start off with the tactical application of it, and then we're going to get into a little bit of a challenge at the end, because I really want to make sure that everyone's using this successfully. So let me share my screen and we will get rolling. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this here. So again, we're going to go through process today, which is, basically A to Z, right? What should happen from the first contact with a potential client or somebody that anyone you're communicating with, really, all the way through to the contract meeting, and then we'll just briefly discuss the post-closing. But it's really important because I want you to audit, as we're going through this, I want to audit how you do this versus how we're teaching you to do it. And if you're doing it differently and you're seeing results, please share it with us, right? Like, just because we teach it a certain way doesn't mean you can't make it your own and can't make it unique. So if you're doing anything different and you're seeing better or worse results because you're kind of A/B testing things, please let us know. So first, we just want to go through initial conversation. A lot of the times we get the question, which is, do we have the dreams and goals call on the initial conversation or not? That's just a product of, timing, right? So let's say I'm sitting at my desk and my phone rings and it's Joe, and Joe is referred to me by, Mary, the realtor. Joe has time to talk to me, right? Because Joe's reaching out to me. If that's the case, I'm going to say, hey, Joe, this is our process, right? We'll typically start with an intake call, right? Or discovery call. We call it the dreams and goals call because we really want to know what you're doing. That call probably takes about 20 to 30 minutes. From there, we'll schedule a consultation, assuming that makes sense for everyone. And then from the consultation, we'll go ahead and take the next steps. But do you have 20 to 30 minutes to chat right now? And if that's the case, jump into it, obviously assuming that you have that time also. Now, the alternative is different, right? Let's say Mary says, hey, Ryan, call Joe, right? He wants to buy a home, or he's interested, or he doesn't know what to do, whatever the setup is. I'm going to call Joe, and I'm going to hope I get to have a discovery or dreams and goals call with him, but I'm not going to just make that assumption, right? So I'm going to say, Joe, is now a good time. And if he has the time, do it. Like, you never want to break up calls if you don't have to. I think back to my earlier years in my subprime days when my manager, I didn't know what loans were. My manager always said, you want to do a one-call close. And looking back, that was the most egregious, stupid thing I could ever think of, because this, what we're trying to help people with requires more than one phone call. It requires getting information, requires time and energy. So we really want to be, competent with how that process works. So next is, how do we make an impact, right? This initial phone call, and we'll get to the dreams and goals call next, but let's just say you only have 60 seconds, right? You call someone and they're like, oh yeah, I do need to get pre-approved. Now's not a great time. I'm at work, blah, blah, blah. You need to be able to have influence and impact in a very short period of time. And the way that you do that is just by asking a simple question. Joe, no problem. I know this is not a good time. When is the best time for you? And just real quickly, did Mary tell you what makes us unique or different as a mortgage lender? No, not really. Okay, well, on our call, I think it's very important that we walk through that, because what we do is very much more valuable and different and unique. And so I want to spend about 20 minutes, maybe 30 on that initial call. We're going to ask a lot of great questions. We're going to really understand what your goals are, and then we'll work towards a strategy from that point. But when's the best time for you to do that, right? You want to let them know that they're going to experience something different on that call other than taking an application, because that's what they expect. If they've gone through this before, that's what they expect. If they have not gone through this before, that's what they expect, right? They don't expect this first call to be anything other than telling someone information, like filling out a credit card application or getting a car loan, over the phone. So making sure where they know what they're about to experience is going to be imperative. The initial call value proposition, that's the extent that I would get into it. If I have a minute or less, right? It's just, did Mary tell you what makes us unique and different? No. Or yes, she said you guys are great, XYZ. Just touch on it briefly, but you really want to get into your value proposition in the consultation. Again, you touch on it a little bit more briefly in the dreams and goals call, which we'll talk about here in a second. So do you go into each feature of AOH during this step? It depends, right? Because initial conversation could be the same as dreams and goals call. And if you're not scheduling, or I'm sorry, if you're not having the dreams and goals call in that first phone call, schedule it via Zoom, right? Like the faster you can get face to face with somebody, the faster that you can see their facial expressions, the faster that you can connect with somebody in a virtual world, do it, right? Like I would do every single call possible. Like if you look at my day, even just a check-in call, even just a random, if I have to call somebody at our company about something, if I have to, call anybody, I'm doing it via Zoom because I want to stand in front of them, right? And so just try and make that a process of yours. You'll see a massive impact in your conversion ratio if your first call or your dreams and goals call is done face-to-face versus if it's just done over the phone. And I guarantee that's the case. So again, initial conversation, you want it to be a dreams and goals call. If it cannot be, you want to schedule the dreams and goals call for as soon as you possibly can that day, right? Like leave very little space because we all hear the term time kills deals. That's a selfish way of looking at it. But the selfless way of looking at it is time allows people to get in their head, right? Because at some point, whether they were talking to Mary or whether they called you or whatever the case may be, they were in the mindset of, I need to learn about buying a home. I want to buy a home. I'm not sure if I can buy a home. I want to get qualified to buy a home. But anything can throw that off, right? Literally, they could have a bad day at work and get scared about finances and never bring that conversation up again. And that's a disservice to them, right? Because we're allowing them to, let fear or emotion take over, right? So we want to try and keep them on the path of education and learning. So we want to keep these calls as close together as possible. So let's move to dreams and goals call here. Roll through this. All right. So this is, again, ideally all this happens on the first phone call, but if you have to schedule it, you have to schedule it. And another thing before I jump into this, let's say, many of you here have a production partner, right? Or somebody who's helping you manage your leads, manage your calendar, manage your email, just kind of manage the front end process with the client. If your production partner is making a call to a lead, they need to be, 9 times out of 10, you want to try and be available for when that client answers, right? Because the last thing they want, hey, Joe, this is Ryan calling. Mary referred us to you, said you're interested, and Bob, who's the mortgage advisor, would love to meet with you. And they go, yeah, I have time now. Oh, well, Bob doesn't. Okay, well, why did you call me? Right? And so if you're making an outbound call to a client, ideally you want the mortgage advisor to be available, or if your production partner or team is doing that, right? And so try and kind of block those times off if you can. But worst case scenario, if that's not the case, then I would say, hey, Joe, just reaching out to you, Ryan's available at this time and this time and this time, and obviously we want to make sure to connect with you. When are you available so we can make your calendar work, right? He'll be available within an hour, whatever the case may be. So just try and work that well with your team, so we're not calling people and saying we have to call them back after we just called them. All right, so now we get into the dreams and goals call. Again, this is a really good dreams and goals call is you talking 30% of the time, them talking 70% of the time. Because, and we have the dreams and goals call script, right? We have the document, just follow that, right? And obviously you can make it more conversational than super robotic or walking down the list. But what you don't want to do is just ask the standard questions and then get down and be like, well, I didn't ask that and that and that, but that's okay. Because it's really not, right? Like what we're trying to do here is we're trying to collect as many puzzle pieces as possible to be able to put together the best picture for them with our advice and our guidance and our strategy. So imagine you have a puzzle and it's a 10-piece puzzle, but you only get 6 of those pieces. You're not going to be able to put it together. You're going to be missing some key components. you might be able to give them the outline of what the picture would look like, but they're going to have to fill in the blanks. And a lot of that stuff is why we put it on there, right? Stuff like life insurance, stuff like future real estate goals, stuff like what's going on with parents and children, things around, retirement planning. Like if we don't know these things, we can't give the proper advice. And if we can't give proper advice, then you might as well just be every other loan officer in the country who takes an application, collects documents, puts together the pre-approval and says, here's what you're pre-approved for. And then we're just perpetuating the same shit that we have been trying to overcome for the past 5 years, right? So ask the right questions and make sure you have everything dialed in. And then as you're asking the right questions, let them know why you're asking them, right? Don't just blindly go through the questions, because people are going to be like, I thought I was trying to get approved for a mortgage, but it sounds like they're a financial advising company. Like we used to get that a lot. So in order to not get that, we started saying, hey, I'm going to ask you a question about retirement here. I want you to know this has nothing to do with you qualifying for a mortgage, because we don't actually need to know this, but it has everything to do with the advice I'm going to give you now and the plan and the strategy that we're going to create for you into the future. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, great. And then go into it. Same thing with life insurance, same thing with parents and children, right? Like you don't want people to think, well, it was easier to qualify with XYZ mortgage because they didn't ask so many questions, right? Like since when has easier been better, right? Like easier is just less friction for somebody to find out what they can do, but have no idea what they should do. So you have to temper your questions with explaining why you're asking them. And then the client will realize, oh yeah, like it seems logical that they would ask me this, right? Especially when you put together all the information in the consultation. You can come back and I'll get to that here in a second. How far into the value proposition do you go? So this is something that, again, I would go into process. My calls were always very, very similar, unless the client drove in another direction, which was, first of all, I'm glad we're on the phone, and I appreciate you reaching out, or I'm glad we got connected. Did Mary tell you what makes us unique or different? Most of the time, it's going to be no, and I'm going to say, okay, well, most lenders do X, we do Y, right? And I talk about all the things we do. And if you're wondering what Y is, I'll break it down a little bit better there. Right? Most lenders send you through this, that, the other. But Bob, have you ever, or Joe's my client, Joe, have you ever applied for a mortgage before? Have you ever been through this process? And if the answer is no, then he's not going to have any frame of reference, so you need to create one for him. And if the answer is yes, then you need to ask him how it went. All right. So Joe, have you gone through? Yeah, I have. Okay, great. Let me take a shot at how that went. All right. You filled out an online application. Person asked you for documents. They then did some math. They sent you your pre-approval letter and told you you're good to go shop for a home. Yeah, that's pretty much how it went. Well, Joe, I want to apologize for that. Right? That's just someone who's interested in selling you debt, but has very little interest in actually helping you become a successful homeowner long term. And that's what makes us unique and different. And we'll show you that. And again, if the answer is no, you just say, well, this is what most people do. This is what we do. And part of that, Joe, is it's important for you to understand our process here. Right. So we're going to spend some time on the call right now, and I'm going to ask you some really important questions. I'll explain why I'm asking them. And then, assuming that the logical step is to do a consultation, we're going to schedule that. Right. And you can either come in the office or we can do it virtually here. But the consultation is going to be the most important part of what you do. Right. Like it's going to fill in all the questions you have. It'll give you confidence as to whether or not this is a good idea, or what purchase price and down payment amount. All of our clients thank us profusely for going through it. Probably takes about 45 minutes to an hour. But by the end of that, you'll know exactly what we should do. And even more importantly, you'll kind of know what you must do, which is kind of the level of certainty that we want all of our clients to be at. And we promise that we will not sell you anything during this entire process. If it's not the right time, we will tell you that. Right, and we'll give you advice and strategy and planning on when it is the right time. But that will come after this conversation. And then ultimately, we're going to help you get your offer accepted. We'll show you how we help you before the transaction, during the transaction, and then what we're really known for and why we're one of the fastest growing mortgage companies is we focus almost 50+% of our efforts on helping our clients become successful after the transaction. And people don't even know that's what mortgage companies do, because most don't. Right? Like we're one of the very first that have ever really tried to accomplish this. And so in the consultation, we'll go over all that with you. We'll go over how we help you in every aspect of real estate or finance. But right now, I just want to help you kind of understand, what the logical step is from here. So any questions around that, any thoughts or concerns, and then just kind of listen to what they're talking about. That's the extent to which I'll go into it. And then as I'm going through the dreams and goals call, I continue to touch on little things and say, we'll go over that more in the consultation. And, oh yeah, that's a big part of the consultation that we're going to really focus on, right? Or, and then when it's done, this is what we're going to do. And the consultation, I'll break that down for you. You want to make this consultation sound like Disneyland, right? It's the place where everybody wants to end up, right? So that's how I would touch on the value proposition. And team, please feel free to type in questions or raise your hand if I'm going too fast or if you want more clarity on something. Ensure you're communicating how you're different if you don't dive into every detail. And again, that's just a process of asking very kind of black and white questions, right? You want to create as much disparity as you can between the standard mortgage industry and us. This is what everyone does. This is what we do, right? This is what you can expect standard. This is what you can expect from us, right? This is why this is bad. This is why what we do is helpful. So when you create that contrast, that's the word I was looking for, you'll be able to clearly communicate how different you are without having to get super detailed, because otherwise this call takes way too long and you're going to have to repeat yourself again in the consultation. The last thing I would say in this step in terms of dreams and goals call is the outcome of this call. Again, I was taught early in my career and back in like 2005 that the purpose of every call was to get the social security number and get the application, right? Like if we would get it, it would be similar to people would ring a bell, you'd put a number on the board. Like if you took an application and you got someone's social security number and you were able to run a credit report, that was celebrated. I unfortunately still believe there is a semblance of that in the mortgage industry today, probably more than I'd like to admit, but I don't really run in a lot of those circles. And that's the challenge with that is if your goal is to take an application, then your goal is not to listen, right? It's to achieve an end. You want to listen intently during this call, and the outcome should be indifferent to you, right? If the answer is, okay, we really need to help this person with buying a home, then go that direction and give courageous advice. Like, you need to do this consultation. Buying a home is going to be the best thing for you, and I just want the opportunity to show you why, right? You don't have to do it. But if someone's not in position or not ready or needs time, tell them that as well. Right? You just want to remove the emotional attachment to the outcome from this conversation. And I promise you, you will get way more business by doing that selfishly than you would if you just tried to get a bunch of social security numbers and run a bunch of credit reports. And the true mission of this call, like the success, is if you have someone who, after you've asked all the right questions, we call them the red flag questions. If you've asked all the red flag questions and they've passed that test, and you know that they can buy a home, they should buy a home, and you believe they must buy a home, then how you judge the success of that call is if you schedule a consultation. Hands down, right? That's what we're looking for, is we just want consultations to come of this, because that's our time to influence, that's our time to educate, that's our time to motivate these people. And people need that now more than ever, right? Because if left to their own devices, nobody would do anything hardly, right? Because fear is pretty crippling. So success on a dreams and goals call, again, assuming that they can qualify and they don't need to go on a longer term kind of improvement or process plan, is get that consultation scheduled, which is the desired outcome. I kind of jumped ahead there. And again, brief covering of the AOH tools during this step. This is not a time to show them any of that stuff. It's very high level. The only caveat to that, or thing that I would kind of move on a little bit, is if someone says, wow, that's really interesting. What is it you do after the transaction that helps? If that's the case and they open that door, then step through it. But do it with brevity, because you want to create anticipation, right? You always want people to want to learn more. You want people to get excited, but you don't have the time, nor is it right for them to overwhelm them with all these things when they may not even want to buy a home, right? They may be doing a discovery call with you just to learn if they should to begin with. Any questions on dreams and goals call? Has anybody had any challenges with it? Has anybody struggled with it, struggled implementing it? Has anybody gotten any feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, that you'd like to share? If so, please raise your hand, type in the chat, we'll call on you, and let us know. All right, let's move on here. So next is the client consultation. Again, that's the goal of the initial dreams and goals call, is to have this client consultation. You want to have it either via Zoom, where you can see them and they can see you, or in person, now that that's becoming a thing again. What you do not want to do is have this client consultation over the phone. You literally might as well just go for a walk for an hour, because it's going to be about the same from a time wasting perspective. People are not auditory learners. We are visual learners. And almost everything we do in the consultation is visual, right? We're going to go over the numbers with them. We're going to, show them, our before, during, and after process. We're going to walk them through the roadmap of the process. We're going to really hammer home how important it is that they open up their perspective and don't focus on the next 30 days, but focus on the next 30 years. And, it's the difference between, imagine going to watch Avatar in the movie theater versus listening to it in your car, right? Like, you could, but it's way better if you're actually there, right? So please make sure you're doing everything you can to have this in person, in either virtual or face-to-face. So this is where your skill level, your knowledge level, and your talent level will come into play. When you're asking, how do you take the information and turn it into an action plan? I actually did this with one of our teammates the other day, and he just said, I just don't feel fully confident in knowing exactly what to do once I get the information. I said, okay, well, I'm going to give you a case study. All right, so let's imagine I'm your client, and I call you and I just say, hey, Mary, or in this case, I don't confuse everyone. Let's just say I'll call in Ryan, right? So I'm the client, and I say, hey, Ryan, I was told to call you. I heard that you guys are just really helpful in real estate and finance, and I own a home. It's about $500,000, worth about $500,000. I owe $300,000 on it, and I have a 2.875 interest rate. I have a $50,000 HELOC. I have about 44 grand in credit card debt at about 22%. I have a car payment of X and a car loan of about 9% at 30,000. I have some student loan debt, and I really would love to move up, but I don't want to get rid of my 2.875. And I'm just trying to figure out what the best strategy is for me and my family. Right. And by the way, I have about $10,000 total in, checking savings. I make X amount of dollars per month. I have about 30K in a 401k. I don't have an estate plan or will or trust in place. I have life insurance through my company, but I'm not really sure what that does. And, I want to plan for my children to go to college. They're 6 and 8. I haven't started saving for that yet. And my parents are in a pretty good place, financially. They own a few properties. But what would your advice be? All right, I gave you a shit ton of puzzle pieces there. I'm trying to say this kindly. Your future as a mortgage professional depends upon your ability to take that information in and turn it into something practical that you can give them in terms of an action plan and advice. And if you're on the call right now and you're thinking, well, damn, like I don't really know what to tell them, that's okay. That just means you have things to learn. Right, and that's where I would highly encourage people to take the CMPS training course, because you learn holistic personal finance. Meet with a financial planner yourself. If you haven't already, we've done financial freedom presentations here, so they're in the e-learning platform, and you can understand the waterfall effect of where people put money and what people should be doing. This is why automation and technology will never replace a really valuable advice-based mortgage professional, because there's no algorithm that can solve for that and human emotion and planning and context around these things, right? So you have to learn how to do that. And if you don't know, find a mentor, right? Find somebody to work with to help you and just say, hey, look, here's my client situation. What would you advise here? Oh, great. Yeah, I would advise, like, in that particular case, I would advise he sells his home. Let's pay off let's keep the car there because that would take too much of his assets out of his, earnings from his home. He's not going to have any, let's make sure we know, but he's married. He's not going to have any capital gains taxes. Let's pay off the credit card debt, student loan. Let's leave there. Let's definitely pay off the HELOC. And then when we get the proceeds from the sale of the home, we can show him a smaller down payment, and let's keep, probably 30 grand in a liquid fund so he has emergency reserves. And let's use this to maybe put towards retirement or college planning. And let's put him in a home, and now we can show him this plan. Right? Like, you just need to have that ability to walk through that. Talk about parents, talk about kids, like, just, he needs $3,000 to create an estate plan, will, or trust, give or take. He's going to need to invest in life insurance, which means we need to open up his disposable income on a monthly basis. We need more cash flow, right? So he can invest in life insurance. Otherwise, all of this is for nothing if he goes down. And let's really work through that, right? But this is the difference between someone who can say that they are a mortgage professional or a mortgage advisor and a loan officer. A loan officer takes basic information, processes it through a system, quotes a rate and a term. That's the exact opposite of who you're aspiring to be. And so everybody just needs to be as confident as they can be to then take that information and give it out. And again, it's a learned thing. It's a learned skill. And typically it's learned when you go through it yourself, right? So if I were you, I would meet with a financial planner tomorrow. I'd meet with a estate planning attorney. I would meet with a life insurance agent. I would meet with a CPA. And I would just go through all of this myself and listen to their advice and their guidance. Because that's how you learn the most, right? It's just by going through a lot of these things yourself. How much of a deep dive do you take into finances and real estate without overwhelming them during this step? That's hard to say because your audience is going to change always, right? Like, another very important trait of being one of the best mortgage professionals in the country is meeting your client where they are, right? So if I'm talking to a fairly financially unsophisticated first-time home buyer, and I get super detailed into how we're going to do tax advantage retirement planning, that person is going to go to someone else, right? I was talking to one of my teammates the other day, and she said, look, I love you, you're great, but I'm going to go with somebody else just because, like, they made it easier, right? They didn't talk about all this stuff, and they just kind of showed me my rate and my payment, and a lot of the stuff you do is incredibly important. I'm sure it was just a little confusing for me, and I kind of wanted the easier route, and that's almost as problematic as not giving them the information to begin with, right? Now, I would love to say you always want to err on the side of being overly educational, but if you're overly educational to the point where you're turning off your clients, or they feel like they're not they're not financially smart enough to even be on that phone with you, and they're going to want, they don't want to feel that way, so they go, somebody that just says, hey, it's okay, we got you, here's your rate, here's your payment, we're good. Like, you have to find a happy medium there, and you have to ask really, meaningful questions, like, how important is this to you, right? Because I can go into, second level algebra, or I could just do basic math, right? Like, you tell me as much as you want to know, and you have to find that rhythm with the client. So definitely don't overwhelm the wrong people, but at the same, flip of the coin, don't underwhelm the people that need and would be impressed and really want more of what you're doing. So as much as you need to be financially savvy, you need to be emotionally intelligent as well, and meet your audience where they are, and then ultimately try and take them where you think they should go. Right? That's really giving courageous advice. Like, I know you're at, Mortgage and Real Estate 101, but I think we can take you to Mortgage and Real Estate 102, 103, right? Or higher. And guys, again, if you have questions on this, or even if you have specifics or situational examples, please let me know. That always makes it a little bit better. What is the desired outcome of the contract call? So we're going to go over contract call next. Now, I think this is supposed to say consultation. What is the desired outcome of the consultation? There's two desired outcomes, right? Because the first thing I would say is if you're not having client consultations with people that aren't sure if they want to buy a home or sell a home or finance a home, you're doing it wrong. Because there's not very many people who know exactly what they want to do. And I remember people used to tell me, like, if they don't send you their documents and if they don't fill out the application, don't waste your time with a consultation. And look, first of all, I fundamentally disagree with that as a philosophy. I can understand why people thought that when they had more business than time, right? Because we were a commodity. We still are a commodity, but a few years ago, we were a commodity that people wanted more of than we had availability of. Right? There were more people that wanted mortgages than there were people to give them mortgages. So I can see people being highly selective with who they spend their time with. Although I don't agree with it. I think you should just build a team that allows you to scale and spend the appropriate amount of time with everybody. But that's a different argument for a different day. So you need to be understanding that your job has changed, right? You need to be doing more consultations these days with people that don't know what they're doing than people that do. Because there's only 16% of America that thinks it's a good time to buy a house, right? Which means 1 out of every 10 people would actually meet with you. The other 9 would not. But in the other 9, there's probably 4 or 5 that should buy a home if somebody would be willing to spend the time with them. Right. So that's why I say there's 2 desired outcomes. If you're having a consultation with a client who because you asked all the right questions in the initial call, they should buy a home, then your objective with a consultation is to get them to take that scary step, right? To actually commit to, like, this information was awesome. You showed me what's happening in the housing market. You helped me understand my personal economy. You helped me understand what my options are. You helped me see the future, which is scary if I don't buy a home. So yeah, I think that I should, and it looks like I actually must buy a home. Great. If that's the case, and you got them there, which means you did your job, then at that point you'd want to say, okay, well, let's just get the application completed. Let's get a credit profile done, and then here's the documents we need. If you can get these to me in the next couple of days, let's get these next steps started. And then I'd recommend a full underwritten approval. That way you can look like cash and explain that part. All right. So that's one outcome. The outcome, if you're already meeting with someone who says, I already know I want to buy a home, I just need some help understanding which home or what price and so on and so forth, then your objective is to say, okay, well, if you already know you're going to do this, why should you do it with me and my team, right? Because you have 400,000 loan officers to choose from. And I believe you should get fully underwritten and approved, and I just want your commitment to do that. All right. So I knew that if I was talking to someone who was planning to buy a home, that a successful outcome of the consultation was when they said, yes, I want to be fully underwritten and approved, and yes, I'm committing to using you and your team moving forward. Right? That's your successful outcome. And we train on exactly how to do that in the consultation, questions asked, and we train it if they say no to that commitment, what to do and how to work through that. Right? And so that's when you know if you've had a successful consultation. And this is the point, really middle of the transaction middle of the consultation is when you ask for the commitment. Because you talk about before, you talk about during, you talk about after, and then you start going into the numbers, right? Like you go with a mortgage coach, you go through the analysis, and then you go into, okay, next steps, which is writing offers, getting offers accepted. And then you're kind of going down that roadmap of, the whole process. And then you say, okay, here's the really important part, right? Getting an offer accepted. Here's how this works. Here's how we help. That being said, if we're going to do the full underwritten approval, we just need 3 commitments, right? We need you to commit to getting us all the right documentation. We need you to commit that you're, interested in writing offers on homes in the next 30 to 60 days. And ultimately, we just want to make sure that you're committed to utilizing our team and our services, because we're going to spend a lot of time and money and energy that we're not going to charge you for, because we know it's going to be a better outcome for you. And we just want to make sure that, you've done all your due diligence and we're the right team for you. And then they say yes, you say great, and then you keep going on with the presentation. Right? And you keep, now let's talk about, the after part and really dive into it, right? So you don't want to end the meeting when they say yes, right? Because it's just it's always better to get a commitment in the flow of a meeting as opposed to making it like, okay, we're done with the meeting. Now, are you in or are you out? It's just too much pressure. You want it to happen more in a flow state than, kind of an end of, are you with us or are you not with us? It puts too much pressure on people, and you kind of want them to just feel like it's a part of an overall discussion, not a kind of direct end. Any questions on consultation? This is something you need to practice. You need to have your deck, right? Like, you need to have your PowerPoint presentation. You need to get good at Mortgage Coach. You need to get good at, kind of analyzing situations. But this was, for so many years, my favorite thing to do, because it was a winning or losing thing. Like, I could tell immediately, like, am I doing well or am I not? And in the beginning, I'll tell you what, I was not doing well. It was terrible. My consultations were awful. And then they got better and they got better. And they got so good to the point where I was like, I don't think I'll ever lose a client. And that was obviously not the case. We lost plenty of clients. But that was a level of confidence I had because I went through it, enough times. So repetition is going to be key here, even if you're doing them practice on other people. All right, now we're going to get into the contract call, or the contract meeting. Again, I'll state this is the most important meeting that you'll have. Otherwise, most of your work will have gone for nothing, right? Like, think about what you've done to get to this point. You've taken that realtor out to 19 lunches. You visited 24 of their open houses. You've, commented on their Facebook profile. You've done a million things, and then they, send you a lead, and you track that lead down, and you follow up with them for a couple of weeks, and you finally connect, and you go back and forth, and then you have a dreams and goals call, and then you take all the information. You're up at midnight, pre-approving, doing all the stuff, prepping for the consultation, have the consultation, overcome their objections, fears, and concerns, get them approved, get them to commit. They're shopping for homes for 3 weeks. You're sending out multiple pre-approval letters. They get their offer accepted. Like, just try and calculate the amount of money in time that has been for you, right? So, like, you spent collectively 40 hours on getting a person to that place. And if you make, on average, I don't know, call it $200 an hour, it's going to be different for everybody, right? But do the math. Right? That's a massive, massive number. And the biggest mistake people make is that they just let the client drive at this point, and they let the transaction have its own heartbeat and its own process. So this is what the standard loan officer does. Hey, Joe, congratulations, your offer got accepted. My team's going to be sending you over the disclosures here. Just keep an eye out for those, and then we'll go ahead and get the rate locked in at 6.5, and we're gonna get the appraisal order. We're gonna need a credit card, and blah blah blah. And we're just super excited for you. If you have any questions, let us know. And we're looking forward to helping get into your home. That's probably better than the average mortgage professional. I've seen teams that literally would just send disclosures and not even have a conversation at all. And then we got to order the appraisal, and they just kind of make it a robotic kind of manufacturing process. We cannot, and by all means, we should not give clients that experience, right? Because this is their most anxiety-ridden time that they have in the entire process. Because up to that point, it's all monopoly. They're just playing a game. There's no commitment. There's no, there's no weight to the whole thing. But here's the deal. That client likely paid more for that home than they wanted to. Multiple offer situations are abound again. The interest rate's definitely higher than they thought it would be. The payment is higher than they wanted. The out-of-pocket expense is higher than they wanted. The cost for insurance and all these fees that they have to pay up front. Then they have to send a large sum of money to a title company, and they don't know if it's protected or how they're going to get it back. They don't know, what really the process is going to look like from this point moving forward. And then they have to sign, addendums to the contract. They have to sign all their title and escrow and closing, pre-closing paperwork. And then here comes the lender with 70 pages of documents. You got to sign these quick, and then fill out this information so we can get your credit card information, so we can order an appraisal, so you can figure out if your home is worth what you actually bought it for. Like, I don't know how anybody actually buys a home and doesn't just cancel every transaction out of sheer anxiety and panic, right? So the only lever they know how to pull at that point is everything is what it is. The home price is what it is. Taxes are what they are. Insurance is what it is. Like, there's just no levers to pull except one, which is, shit, I just need the lowest interest rate and the lowest payment possible. And I forgot everything that happened to this point, all the time that Ryan and his team spent, and all the stuff they did, and the time and the gifts that they sent, and all the energy they put into this thing, and how they helped me get my offer accepted. All that goes out the window because I'm in fight or flight mode. So I can pull a lever, which is find the cheapest freaking mortgage out there, and then call Ryan and say, dude, I'm so sorry, I love you guys, but like, this is just scary and it's a lot, and this is what's best for my family, and the story we've all heard more times than we'd like to admit. So to counteract that, right, is you want to predict, preempt, and prevent. Renee Rodriguez uses that term a lot, right, which is predict that it's going to happen. We know what's going to happen. We have tons of history knowing that it's going to happen, right? So we want to predict it. We want to preempt it, meaning that we want to proactively get in front of it so we can prevent the inevitable outcome of the person just trying to find the cheapest interest rate, which means that whenever an offer goes out, right, let's say Joe's writing an offer. I'm going to say, Joe, I'm going to send this offer out on 123 Main Street. I'll send it over to Mary so she can submit the offer. Just so you know, I'm going to call the listing agent and I'm going to let them know we've already done all the work and you're fully approved, and we're going to help you get this offer accepted. We're going to help you not have to be the highest price. We're going to help you not have to submit multiple offers. Oh, and by the way, as we talked about in the consultation, when and if this offer gets accepted, we just need to make sure that within 24 hours of the offer getting accepted, that we schedule that contract meeting, because it's going to be incredibly important. In that contract meeting, we're going to go over our lock versus float strategy on your interest rate, so we can protect the payment and make sure this home stays within the family budget. We're going to go over our down payment and out-of-pocket strategy, right? Because the home may need work, it might not. There's different caveats, right? We might get seller credit to be able to use to buy down the rate. There's just some different variables that we'll have to contend with, that we'll have to work through. We want to really make sure it works with your long and short-term goals, as we talked about. We want to make sure we get the proper insurance set up on it, so our insurance team can get started on that. And ultimately, we want to walk you through exactly what's going to happen, because there's going to be some anxiety happening, right? Like it's natural. So we'll walk you through the entire timeline, who's going to do what you can expect. And most importantly is we're going to protect your earnest money deposit, that initial deposit you're going to put down. It's not going to go live or go what we call hard, where you can't get it back until a certain point. And so, guys, if you're realizing this, like, what you're doing is you're scaring the hell out of them at this point. Like, there's a lot of really important things that we need to go over in a very short period of time. So they're going to be the first, but we need this contract meeting. When are we going to have the contract meeting? I want to know all those things yesterday. Great. As soon as the offer gets accepted, we're going to have it, right? So offer gets accepted, contract meeting happens. Again, within 24 hours, you ideally have them in your office. Worst case scenario, you have them on Zoom, and you have your team who's going to help them from contract to close be a part of that post-closing call. In our world, we call them loan coordinators. And then we go over this entire process, and then there's in the e-learning platform, there's the contract meeting document. And in this document, if it is completely filled out, that means that you should have an incredibly smooth transaction all the way through. You fill out your part, loan coordinator fills out their part. If you don't have a loan coordinator, you fill out the whole thing. But essentially what this is it's compiled of all the things that are the gotchas during a transaction, or, oh, I wish I would have asked this, or I wish I would have known that, or I wish I would have, confirmed this with the client before. All those things we continue to add to this list until now there's no more things that ruin a transaction, right? We get them all out of the way. Client has clarity, we have clarity, we know where the money's coming from, we know all the little intangibles, and it gives the client a ton of confidence. I will tell you that plenty of times people come to me like, this file is going sideways, and I go, well, let's just show me the contract document. And they go, oh, we didn't do a contract meeting. I go, okay, well, you deserve this. Like, this, you brought this on yourself, right? Like, if you have fires you're putting out, it's because you didn't take this 30-minute step. It's 30 freaking minutes, right? It's not a long, drawn-out thing, and it reduces client anxiety. It reduces the the fear and uncertainty. It gives them confidence. They know, like, this team has it, right? They've got everything under control, and there's so much that they wouldn't even comprehend that somebody else could get it under control if they even wanted to try and change or find a cheaper option at that point. Right, because every little variable has been dialed in, right? And you've committed to them a certain interest rate, and you let them know if you're going to lock or float it. You let them know so they feel a part of that decision. That's not happening to them, right? They're not being assigned an interest rate that they could be assigned a lower one somewhere else. They're a part of that process, and they feel like they have empowerment in what happens to them. So all that's there. And again, we have all this in the e-learning platform. Reminding clients of the tools they'll have access to once the loan is closed, right? So this is where you introduce, relocation technology. Like, hey, you're going to get notified, from a company called Updater. It's going to help you move into your new home. It's going to timeline everything. You'll be getting XYZ from us. And then, just so you know, when the transaction closes, in our world, we say, look, I'll use Darcy. She's been my loan coordinator for years. At this point, Darcy's going to take you from here all the way through to closing. If you don't hear from me, that means everything's gone perfectly. I'll still be overseeing the entire transaction. And then we'll chat and you'll connect with our client success manager. And we'll do a post-closing call, at the end of the transaction. And that's when we're going to really help you understand all the services you're going to get from our Art of Homeownership or Neo Experience platform. You don't need to overwhelm that contract meeting. There's a lot happening there. You just let them know what to expect moving forward. Telling the client what they should do versus what they can do. This is, again, reinforcing the decision, right? Like, hey, you've known that you could buy a home. You've now accomplished, right, the opportunity to buy one. We're in contract. Now, you could still pull out for a multitude of reasons, but I don't believe you should. I think this is the perfect deal for you. Again, assuming you do believe that, you never want to lie. But I want to reiterate how important this is going to be for you and your family, right? Like, this is a must-do situation, and you did it. And most people are afraid of that. Like, give them kudos, right? Like, they're doing something that is most people are too afraid to even approach, or even, too ashamed of a potential rejection to even try and learn about, right? So this is the time where you want to really motivate them at a high level to, if there's a, inspection and they see that the, grass is brown, but they don't cancel the transaction because the seller is not willing to fix it, right? Like, you are going to be more in control of the client's emotions and their decision making, almost always often than the realtor, right? Because you're tapping into the most visceral part of someone's world, which is often their finances, right? Because that's where people have the most fear and concern. So this is an opportunity for you to really continue to drive the message that not only have you done something great, but it's going to create very great things to come. So takeaway here, if you do this, assuming that you do it this way, your value will be untenable. Like, it won't even be close to what other mortgage people are doing, right? And if that's the case, your process has to be very different. Right. So this is kind of a backward statement, right? If you do it, you're going to be the most valuable person you can be. And then, just continue to take time to ask the right questions, give advice, what the client should do, and what's going to be in their ultimate best interest. So in our 10 minutes left here, or 12 minutes left, I want to share something with you. So I'll kind of stop this share, but, and please feel free to type in, questions or raise your hand if we can help. One thing that I've realized being a coach to a lot of people and kind of leading an organization over the last really 2 years, probably year and a half specifically, is that as the industry has gotten harder and harder, there's a break, there's a gap that I see with a lot of mortgage professionals, right? Because I've just told you what to do. I told you exactly what to do, right? But for some reason, people don't just do that. And I'm realizing that there's a difference between knowing and doing, and it's usually human psychology and human behavior that's the reason, right? And so if you know what to do, right, like we just went over it, you have all the tools, you have all the resources, you have all the learning you could possibly imagine, more so today than you probably ever have. If there's a gap between what you know you should do and what you've been doing, it's likely because there's a barrier that we're not aware of, right? There's a fear, there's a doubt, there's a limit for something that's preventing us from taking action. So do a favor, take out a pen, paper, open up whatever you use to take notes. I want you to write down the answer to a question. I'll give you a second to get that ready. So my question is, and answer this: when, where, and with whom are you going to use this advice or this strategy by the end of the week? Right, so it's Wednesday, midday, by the end of the day on Friday, when, where, and with whom are you going to take action on what we just went over? I'll give you some hints or some pointers, right? Any new client, any new realtor conversation, you can present this to them. Any person in your database, you can call and tell them about this and what, when take them through this process, do an equity analysis, right? Just go through the process with people. And then any existing referral partners, which is probably the easiest one, right? And just be vulnerable with them. Be like, hey, I'm really redefining what I want to be to our clients and to you, Mr. or Mary, right? But I'm getting better at it, but I need some help, and I'd love your advice, and I'd love to, kind of walk you through this process with you as a test case, if you don't mind. Great, you're my lending partner. Let's do it. Let's get better. But look, if there is a gap between what you know and what you're doing, we have to close that gap, because failure to launch it's typically just a confidence problem, right? And look, I'm telling you, there's not a single person on this call, if you're a part of Art of Homeownership or New Experience or anything that your company may call it, you are infinitely more valuable than any other mortgage lender in the country, right? In fact, you're so much more valuable that you should be so confident that you talk about this too much with too many people. And people have to like, dude, you told me this 1,000 times. I get it. But we have to close that gap. So look, I know that saying it is easy, but I know that some of you are still going to have some mental or emotional or psychological barrier. And if you do, that's okay. But I'm also begging you, like legitimately asking you from the bottom of my heart, reach out to me, right? You AOH team, your mentor, whomever, but specifically asking you to reach out to me so we can work through that. Now, I know in the back of your head, you may be saying, well, I don't want to reach out to him and let him know that I'm struggling, or that I have, I'm having some challenges with this for whatever reason is, right? Could be pride, could be ego, shame, fill in the blank, whatever you want to call it. But let me tell you what the alternative is. The alternative is you continue to kind of stay in this, well, I know what to do, but I'm not doing it, kind of chasm. And you end up just wasting your time, right? Because you keep learning and prepping and getting ready and getting better and, trying to perfect your things, but you're not doing anything with it. And in turn, if you're doing that, we, as your coaches or mentors or whatever you want to call us, right? We think everything's just fine, so we don't actually help you. And that vicious cycle will just continue. Then it ends up being a waste of everyone's time. So dude, just bury your pride, right? Ask for help if you need it. And if you don't need it, then go prove it, right? But just go implement all this and then tell us about the results. So I'm going to leave you with this. I want 2 outcomes from this call, right? One is take the information, start doing it immediately, and then tell us about the results. And if you've been doing it, keep doing it, do it better and tell us about the results. That's one outcome. The other outcome is you realize you're struggling in some way, right? There's some barrier between launching and knowing, and then reach out to me and I will personally help you. There's no third outcome here, because I don't want you to waste your time. I don't want us to waste ours. Right? Like, you know what to do. Let's go do it. Prove the results. And if you need help, reach out. No third option. So I'll pause. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, please let me know. Otherwise, look, just have a really great rest of the week. Hopefully these tools have helped you and you can go implement them and see the results by Friday. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for your time. And if you need anything, you know where to find us.